Welcome to Soroka Speaks, coaching minds and elevating careers. We're so happy to have you here. We hope that you enjoy this episode and that it supports you to put your potential in motion. What's up, everyone? This is Emily Haruko-Lieb coming to you with Soroka Speaks. I'm your co-host, and I am here with my lovely co-host.
Here I am. It is Claire Adjemy, VP of Development for Soroka, and super excited to be back with you with my wonderful co-host, as you mentioned, Emily, and one of my incredibly best friends.
I love it. Well, today we are talking about what is coaching, what's our personal experience. We're going to share some of our own individual stories of what it means to be coached. And we're also going to talk about who we are as coaches. Claire, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's your definition of coaching? If someone comes and asks you, like maybe has no sense of what it is you do in that capacity, what would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really interesting question, right? Because it does come up in conversation a lot. And some people blur the lines between coaching and therapy. But coaching ultimately is focused on the future, and it's focused on growth, and it's focused on achieving your dreams. And I absolutely love it. I love focusing on growth and what can be achieved when you really put your mind to it and when you're really determined to build a life or a career of your dreams. And for me, that is absolutely how I define coaching to anybody that will ask me. How about you, Em?
I do really love this question, and I think it's important to educate people on what coaching is and what it isn't. So I resonate 100% with, coaching is really about creating the future. And I say that, it's not that the past doesn't come into coaching. Of course it does. It's, this is where our habits came from and our belief systems and our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others, like all of that stuff, the context is often based in the past, right? So the distinction for me is when the past shows up in the present as a barrier to creating the future, as opposed to the past showing up to the present as a fact or an experience that you're taking into the future. It's not a barrier to creating the future. If the past is a barrier to creating the future, so you have, some forgiveness to do or some grudge to let go of or some behavior to correct, if you're unable to address those things in creating the future, that's usually where I say, like, the other proponents for that kind of support is therapy and psychotherapy and psychiatry and counseling. And all of those things, including coaching, are nuanced. And so, I can be a little militant sometimes with my definition around things. And I would say that what I do is like coaching that bleeds also into consulting, right? Because coaching is very much about holding space for other people to arrive. In addition to creating the future, is about other people being able to arrive at their decisions and their choices. And sometimes consulting is a little bit more advising people what they might want to do, right? And sometimes I do bleed into that, and I'm very clear about, that the relationship when you enter in with me is often like a kind of a combination of those two things. And do we have permission to play with each other in that capacity, in that realm? If that's what they want, because sometimes people are like straight up like asking for advice, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's sometimes is that blurred line, like you mentioned, and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, is kind of how do you differentiate between the two and how do you handle those situations as a coach? But I think, you touched on some really valid points there. It's about how the past that has determined who we are now at this moment in time. And it's looking at, no matter what things have happened to you in the past, what you've gone through, it's sometimes you have to work through that, right? Like we just touched on with the therapy or counseling or however people determine that. They have different definitions or people see them in slightly different ways. But it's once you're kind of in a place of, okay, I understand this is who I am and I understand why I show up like this. It's sometimes using that as like the fuel. I always put it like the rocket up your backside, it's that fuel to go, well, watch me overcome all these things and watch me turn it around. It's not it's not letting that hold you back anymore. And I think that's what's really important. It's really important to recognize that, understand that, and yeah, really use that as a driver to go, that may have been my past, that may have happened to me, that may have been who I was. It's not who I'm going to be. So watch me turn this around. And I really feel so passionate when I talk about that, or when I, see other people go, yeah, that was what happened to me was bad, or I was in a bad place. Now I want to turn things around and help me achieve things that in the past I thought I couldn't. And I think that's really important as well.
Well, that's a beautiful segue to like your personal experience of coaching. So, tell us a little bit about like what it's been like for you to be coached, right? And to maybe support the development or the growth of some of those, the milestones that occur and the breakthroughs that are necessary for you to, live into who you're becoming versus being determined by who you were. What's your like journey or story there? Excuse me.
Absolutely. And so for me, some of my biggest learnings actually came whilst I was training to be a coach. And it was a lot of training. I did 2.5 years of schooling to train to where I am now. And every week I would show up and it just brought so many things up for me from the past that I just had not worked through. And, I would show up some days and be super emotional and, not want to go to therapy and not want to really talk about it, but just couldn't process it because something had triggered me. And it was a massive learning curve for me. And actually, it was the first time that I realized, or that I accepted, that I did need to talk about my past. And so I did go and get some therapy off the back of training to be a coach, because I just buried my feelings for such a long time. Or, I would work through stuff, I don't know, in anger or however I would do it, or journaling, and never really fully kind of went down that rabbit hole. And once I realized I needed to in order to move forward, it was so powerful for me. And over the last few years, I have dipped in and out of having a coach. And recently, I don't know if I told you this, that I actually, did I tell you that I've taken a new life coach? Even in the space of a few weeks, it's really changed my mindset, even to getting my butt back in the gym, which is not a professional growth or development, but it's a personal goal of mine. That I used to be massive into the gym. And for various reasons throughout the year, I've found every reason not to get my bum back in the gym, even though every week I set that intention. And one of the biggest things that he said to me, which I never thought about, even being a trained coach, he said to me, you can't create more time, Claire. All you can create is the space within the time that you have. So within your day, there is only 24 hours. And so the space, you have to create space to allow yourself to go in the gym. And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't even revolutionary. But for me, it changed my mindset immediately. And I've been in the gym 3 times a week since I set that intention 3 weeks ago. And it's only 3 weeks and it's 6 weeks to form a habit, right? But for me, I was getting in there once a week. And even then I was turning up and I was, moaning or whingy. And I am so happy, and it completely changed my mind. And so I really do, I love being a coach, but I also practice what I preach as well. And I take my own coaches when I feel the need to sort of level up my life or get a little bit more clarity. The most basic example of what I can tell you, there's lots of things that have come up for me over the years, but that was the most recent one. And one small saying completely changed my mindset. And I've been the most efficient in the last few weeks than I have been for, I don't know, maybe a few months prior to that, 6 months prior to that.
I love it. It is. It's the power of coaching, And,
Yeah.
his job is to support you with what you're committed to. And so where you come to those, that relationship from that place is really, really powerful. I'll share a little story, and it's interesting because I actually was just in a client session this morning, and the individual and I were talking a little bit about how they've always kind of done what they would never like make a decision outside of like their parents' approval, and like considered what they should study and what schools they should go to. And there was a time in this individual's life where they were 9 months into a new position. and they felt the inspiration and the call to take a job with the current company where they work, who's our client. Right. And so her parents told her, only 9 months into this new job, she's fairly new out of university. And they said, biggest mistake you'll make. Now she's 4 years into the company. She's seen them go IPO. I would imagine she's probably got some equity in that capacity. And I just asked her today, what do your parents say now? And she straight up said, they say, we were wrong. And it was the first time she said that she had ever noticed, like, that she had to think for herself, and that her parents are not always right, And so the flavor of this conversation sort of led us down this path of what I really believe coaching has the ability to do is allow us to think for ourselves and allow us to cultivate the most powerful relationship with ourselves that we've ever experienced. Because the one that I got with me is the only one that actually lasts my entire life. And I have to live with all of my decisions, the results that I do or don't create, right? Nobody's going to do that for me. And I think we're very trained in our culture and a lot of societies to really look outside of ourselves for the answer, look outside of ourselves for the wisdom. So I really believe that we've all got this really beautiful, wise internal compass, and coaching is a way that helps us nurture that and access that and creates a space for us to access that and to explore with that. So yeah, I think that's something. I really actually also love what you said about in your coach training is where you realize you've got a lot more of your own stuff to address and work on. And I can say the same thing. In my coach training, I had some really aha moments about my adolescence that alluded to me why there were certain things that were the way they were in my life. So tell me a little bit about who from that capacity. I really believe as a coach, you can only take your client as deep as you're willing to go, they say, meaning you have to be doing your own work. You have to be in your own work if you're going to guide people to do their own work. So tell me a little bit about how does that impact who you are as a coach and your kind of coaching philosophy and what you bring to the table a little bit professionally in terms of your service, how you show up as coach.
Do you know what? It's something that I think about a lot as well, because I do feel like I have a lot of empathy for people, and sometimes I have to catch myself. So if one of my coachees is, either emotional or they're kind of really having a bad day or they're having a big blocker, I have to catch myself as a coach not to want to try and fix them and give them all of the answers. And it's something that, people would think, why wouldn't you give them the answers? Why wouldn't you just help? Well, the coaches are here to help you find your own answers and help you find your own path, not to tell you what to do, and it's quite a big distinction, right, between coaching and either mentoring or something like that, or just being a friend. And so for me, that's something that I am always aware of, to maintain that and try and switch that narrative back round, because I want people to live their best life. I want to be a walking advert for my own, who I am as a coach and what I've managed to achieve in my career and my life, no matter what my upbringing has been, no matter what has happened to me in adulthood. I kind of want to be a walking advert that you can achieve things. Let's stay focused. Let's, really work on the things that are important to you and look at what is possible when you dream big, and then drill down into how do we get there through all of the questions that I will ask, and, just the exploratory conversations that I'll have with my clients. But it is, for me, as a coach, I have to be very mindful that not to be wanting to solve all of their problems, which is the mothering side in me as well that comes out. But yeah, what about you, Emily? How do you show? You've been coaching longer than I have, so I'm sure you've gone through lots of different, experiences, things that perhaps may have triggered you that have come from your clients. How do you show up as a coach? And actually, I have a second question. Is that different to now to when you first started coaching?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So yes, so different. Okay, well, I guess I'll answer the latter question first.
Yeah.
Yeah, this, they say that coaching is a practice, right? Like law or like medicine, right? You have to practice it. It's changing and evolving. And, the concept of coaching is actually relatively new in terms of coaching in business and coaching in life, right? We could say like only as early as like the late 70s, early 80s did this kind of concept kind of come into play. So yeah, when I first started coaching, I remember reading a book called The Prosperous Coach by Steve Chandler and Rich Lippin. And then I then went on to like become part of Rich Lippen's community for a number of years. And actually there's a whole coaching and growth edge to that story and that few years of my life and me really finding my own voice and all the growth that I did at that time, which was at the time around like 2017. Anyways, I started coaching in 2013. It wasn't until maybe, I'd probably been coaching a number of years already before I read this book. And this book just had this way of kind of like almost like classifying almost like rankings of coaches, like maybe not specific coaches, but like levels of coaches from like starting out as like a novice to, whatever. I can't even remember all the different like levels, if you will. Or if they even refer to them as that. I don't remember. But I remember thinking like, I don't want to be a novice coach, like I want to be that coach that has like all the quotes down and the different distinctions and like can so easily help someone flip their thinking on their head and just really connect deeply with people and build a rapport very fast. And there's some of that which comes a little bit naturally to certain personalities, some more than others. And I, might fall into that category. But really, I can say now, 11 years later, like I am that coach that I wanted to be. And I can feel the difference. I know the difference. You'd like 11 years of experience is different than 2, is different than 3. So it's like anything. But at the end of the day, it's a practice. And I think as coaches, we show up committed to that practice each and every day. We have no idea the conversations that we're going to have or get into. And it's an exciting career that way. And then to answer, I guess, your first question, like or like the question we're pondering, like, who am I as a coach? I think there are a few kind of like guiding philosophies that I have, if you will, around that. And one is, that we kind of mentioned earlier. Well, a couple of things we mentioned already. One is like, I try to be as committed to my own work as I can be. And sometimes for me, what that looks like is like, because is really just being in my deepest level of self-awareness. So being really honest with myself. And you've seen me at times be really honest with myself around stuff that I'm not really proud of, right? So that to me is like my ability to kind of hold that for myself or just be real with myself in that is like, this is part of what it is to be like human and to be alive and to be in a conscious relationship with myself. Like I really loathe cognitive dissonance and I will endeavor to like take that on as much as I can. And I'm human and I have blind spots, which is why we need support and so forth. Okay, but this is like kind of back to my sort of fundamentals. So do my own work so I can take my clients deep and hold space and range for whatever shows up and really inviting a space where if people want or need to go deep, that they can, and it's safe and it's valuable to do so. And then I think that I also mentioned, like, I believe that being a coach means like my job is to be agenda free and is to be surrendered to being right or wrong in any conversation, but to hold a genuine space where someone gets to be really ruthlessly honest with themselves. And I might even add, like, in a loving environment. Like I genuinely believe, like, I don't care if I just met you and it's our first session or we've been working together for 5 years. Like, I love the people that I work with. Like, it's not everybody, but it's most of them, like, because I'm showing up as like to support you becoming the best human you can be while simultaneously meeting you where you are at. And there's something really beautiful about that when you genuinely hold that from human to human. You create something special. Yeah. And then I think, like, I don't know, part of I think what makes me a great coach is like, I think I've got a lot of experience and distinctions in working with people and myself, like around leadership and what leadership really is and means. And, like I can only speak from my own experience and the people that I've served, but there is, something really beautiful about servant and transformational leadership and what really gets created in safe environments where that is present and the innovation and the creativity and the camaraderie and the connection that happens. Like, this is what it means to be alive for me. This is what it means to work. I don't know, like I'm going to be working for the next few decades. Like, I want to do that in environments that light me up.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point that you mentioned about kind of the confidentiality, the safety, the safe space, the loving environment. You know, that is a massive part of coaching that I think people perhaps don't go into coaching because they're afraid of that. They're afraid of judgment or, you know, facing some honest truth or really saying, I want to open my own business, and yet they're just getting started as an employee, for example, but they've got huge aspirations. And maybe it's that fear of ridicule or fear of what my family are going to say if I leave that job and try something new, you know, which you touched on. And I think it's understanding actually coaching is such a safe space. It's that place to come and just be real, like you mentioned, and be honest with yourself. We come with no judgment.
No.
Yes, I was going to touch on that.
Setting the right partner that's deploying the right skills. Let's not be naive to that, because let's be honest, like, this industry is like the wild, wild west. So it's like, if you are watching this and you have, maybe you've never dabbled in coaching, yes, like, credibility matters and experience and training matter, because that is the difference between someone being able to hold that safe, warm, loving space for people to be really honest with themselves versus a coach that doesn't know what they're doing or did some $10 training online, and now all of a sudden you're thinking you're stepping into coaching in this safe space and you're not. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I think that's a very...
No, I appreciate you for dropping that one in, because I was going to touch on that as well. And I think there is that knowing that actually the coaches that you're working with have that credibility and that experience. And it's also picking a coach that actually you gel with and you blend well with, because we don't get on with every single person, right? And so a coach should be the person that you can feed off their energy, you resonate with them, you you want to show up and be your authentic self for the sessions and stuff. So yeah, you know, you and I, obviously we're our own biggest advocates for the work that we do, but we may not be everybody's cup of tea. And that is also fine, because you could be 2-3 sessions in and think, actually, this isn't for me. And it's also understanding, if you pick a coach, that there may be something that doesn't sit well for the coach. You know, it's not, personally, it hasn't happened to me where I thought, oh, I don't really want to work with this client. But there may be times where I think, I can't work with you. You trigger something in me, or you want something that I'm unable to help you achieve.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important thing to recognize as well.
I think that's maybe one small difference in tenure. Not that you couldn't have that experience earlier on in your coaching career, but yeah, I promise you, once you get to 11 years in, you will definitely have had people that you let go of working with. And to bring it back to our earlier point, is when I do endeavor to coach somebody and their past is showing up as a barrier to the future, I always recommend therapy and coaching at that time. So I've had enough times where I've told people that they also need to, if they want to keep working with me, they also need to be in therapy to handle stuff that's come up that I'm not equipped to deal with. You know, we can talk about it, but I'm not equipped to necessarily support you with it and so, you know, there was a client who needed some therapy and was in therapy and also in coaching. 3 months after they started the therapy, we're still I'm banging my head against a wall in our coaching session. Like, there is no movement. And I genuinely told her, like, you're wasting your money. And I don't know if I said it like that, but in layman's terms, this is not worth your investment. Like, we're not moving the needle to what I know is possible and like what feels good for me taking your money. Like, this is now no longer of service to you. Like, based on what I'm committed to, the service I'm committed to providing. And let me tell you, like, it had to get to that point where it was exhaustive, right? Like, I didn't make that decision lightly, is what I want to say. You know, like, there's a lot of contemplation and conversation. And this was the second round that I had worked with this woman. So there are times where, you know, I had another client who was self-harming. And that's one of my, you know, that's the only clause to confidentiality, is harming yourself or somebody else.
Yes.
So, that I also had to, that was really early on. That was like one of my first coaching clients. And I had to seek advisory on that, right? Like I needed to go to the one I was training with and working with and like, yo, this came up and I don't know what to do. And they obviously coached me and worked me through it. But yeah, you will have all kinds of those moments of contemplation and decision, which I think at the end of the day, the filter has to be what is of the highest level of service for the client. And even if it's hard for you, that's the choice that needs to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you, to anyone that hasn't had coaching, what would you say is sort of how would the audience know that they're ready for coaching, right? What would be kind of not triggers, but thoughts that running through their mind? What would you say when people are on the fence?
Yeah, I think if there's something in your life that you really want and that you really want to be committed to, or you really want to create, and maybe that's something you've contemplated for a while and you still haven't really got around to it. Or maybe there's like some ways in which you want to be resourceful in your own life or creating that space, like that you were talking about, space and time to fill in whatever it is that you're passionate about. And if you just notice that like you haven't been able to kind of do that on your own yet, especially if it's something you've been thinking about for a while, chances are if you could do it on your own, you probably would have done that already. Coaching is a beautiful way to potentially step into creating a little bit more action, accountability, and understanding around maybe what's stopped you in the past. And then also just really creating a vision for the future that's so inspiring and compelling that it has you want to show up to the process.
I love that. I think that's really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, this was fun. So thanks for listening, peoples. We hope that you will join us back here again soon. And we hope you got some value today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao for now.